think so anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil here on GB News. We've got a cracking show lined up for you today.
Yes, with Liz Truss set to make an imminent return to frontline politics, we're joined by one of her closest supporters in Parliament.
We'll also be joined by a remarkable woman who was a victim of a sexual assault but took years to persuade the CPS to prosecute her attacker, and she's written a book about it.
And a bill passed through Parliament yesterday making bosses liable if an employee is harassed by a customer. We'll be discussing if this is more legislative lunacy.
And of course, we want to hear from you today. In fact, we're also going to be speaking to some GB viewers this morning as well about their issues of the week. If you want to get in touch, please email us on gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Tatiana.
Phil, thank you very much. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The multi-agency search for missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, has entered its 9th day as specialist teams continue to trawl the nearby river. Our national reporter, Theo Chikomba, is there for us. Theo, what's the latest?
Yes, good morning. It's continuing here. The searches are underway. This morning there are officers on the ground and a helicopter is currently circulating where I am this morning as they search for the mother of two, Nicola Bulley. A number of agencies have been working throughout the week to establish what happened since last week, Friday. And of course, family and friends are of course waiting for further details. We heard from Lancashire Police Superintendent Sally Riley that many officers have been going in and around the village looking at CCTV footage, and they're appealing for more dash cam footage which could help the police, and are asking people to call 101 if they do have any information which will be useful for this investigation. But here in Lancashire, in St Michael's and Wyre, the community is still coming to terms with what happened and trying to put pieces of the puzzle together to establish what's happened to the mother of two, Nicola Bulley, here in Lancashire.
Thank you. That's our national reporter, Theo Chikomba there. We'll bring you more updates on the search for missing Nicola Bulley as we get it. Health leaders are warning the NHS will struggle to clear backlogs and improve emergency care unless strike action comes to an end. The NHS Confederation says the government must show initiative to end the dispute or risk patients suffering even longer waiting times than they do now. Thousands of nurses and ambulance workers will strike on Monday in what many are calling the biggest strike day the health service has ever seen. Former medical director Dr. Andrew Vallance says the ball is in the government's court.
I mean, of course they are worried about their salaries, but it's a feeling of lack of recognition of the work that they do, and then you see, and they look at other workers in the NHS who are desk-bound, who are working normal days, and they're working 8 or 12-hour shifts without breaks, and they say, why can't we get better recognition for what we do?
3 teenage boys have been charged with murder after a man was stabbed to death in the West Midlands. 20-year-old Bailey Atkinson was attacked on the high street in Walsall in the early hours of the 28th of January. He later died in hospital. The three teenagers, a 15-year-old and two aged 16, were arrested on Tuesday and they're due to appear at Wolverhampton Magistrates Court today. Health officials are encouraging 16 to 49-year-olds to get their autumn COVID booster before the NHS scales down its vaccine programme to focus on at-risk patients. The NHS says hundreds of thousands of appointments are available up until the 12th of February for those within that age bracket. After this date, the jabs will only be offered to those considered to be at risk of serious illness. COVID infections, though, in the UK have dropped for a fourth week in a row. Now, at least one British sailor has been taken to hospital after problems with water supplies on board their warship. HMS Portland has returned to base after a precautionary measure after reported contamination. The Daily Telegraph newspaper reports the wrong chemicals were put into the water system, but error was flagged quickly by staff. The ship has returned to Portsmouth and the issue is being investigated. US officials say a second suspected Chinese spy balloon has been spotted moving over Latin America. It's after one was spotted flying over sensitive military sites in the United States yesterday. Earlier, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken called off a visit to Beijing, calling the move a clear violation of US sovereignty and that he would be prepared to resume his visit when conditions allow. China maintains it was, in fact, a civilian weather airship which had been blown off course. And the Princess of Wales has launched a photo-sharing campaign on social media to raise awareness of the importance of early years development. Kate led the campaign by posting a photograph of herself as a baby with her father. It's all part of her Shaping Us campaign, which has drawn support from the likes of rapper Professor Green and presenter Fern Cotton. She's hoping that people will follow suit over the weekend. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Esther and Philip.
Thank you, Tatiana. To take a look through the papers this morning, we're delighted to be joined in the studio by writer and broadcaster Amy Nichol and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. So, who wants to go first?
Belinda, come on.
I'm happy to. I would like to talk about the front page of the Daily Telegraph. This is all about the online misogyny being set to be outlawed. This is to do with the online safety bill, and the former Culture Secretary, Baroness Morgan, wants it to go further and make an amendment to further protect women from misogyny online by allowing Ofcom to fine social media companies 10% of their global profits if they allow misogynistic abuse of women online. Now, all sounds great. There is a huge issue with, obviously, violence and abuse of women. It can scare women away from public life if there's too much of abuse. But the problem I have with it, as always, is the redefinition of words. We're living in a climate where words like racism and misogyny are coming to mean this huge net to catch anyone who criticises, for example, women in. And we've seen it recently with Jeremy Clarkson and accusations that he's a misogynist because he mocked and insulted Meghan, and it's just not misogyny. So what is misogyny? Who gets to decide it? It's supposed to be a hatred of women, and yet people are calling men misogynists for shouting at women. For example, I know Gina Miller has made an accusation against Dominic Raab recently that he has been seemingly misogynistic because he was shouting and aggressive to her. I've had women bosses shout at me and be aggressive to me in the office before, and it's certainly not misogynistic, so we have to be really careful about defining misogyny correctly and keeping the potency and gravitas of words like misogyny before we start, I
think that's a fair point, and I'll come to you, Amy. How do you say this is the borders, boundaries of the word misogyny that we will pursue you on?
I think it's really important, because I disagree with Belinda, because I think that when you look at something like rape or murder of a woman, that is never a primary offence. the things we're talking about are what sow the seeds of the more serious crimes. The misogyny can be very, very small, but from those little acorns, great oak trees do grow.
Give us an example, Amy.
Oh, so an example would be Wayne Couzens. He was found to be flashing. The police didn't pursue it.
He was flashing. But
flashing.
That's not misogyny. That's
I would
an offence.
say no, because if you send somebody an unsolicited picture of yourself, if you're a man,
an online
that's
flashing,
not.
not
And with this new bill, it could lead to a minimum 2 years in prison, maximum 2 years in prison. So if Wayne Couzens, if that was treated as misogyny and recorded as such, then he wouldn't have been able to go on, perhaps, to do what he did. And I think it's important to nip this in the bud.
I understand that, and I think sort of what is the definition. So we're not saying it shouldn't be seen and overseen, but how do you police it? Where are the people going to come? How do we police it?
I think that it's obvious. If something is attacking an innate protected characteristic, which currently femininity isn't in that, it needs to be included in that so that we can identify something as what is a hate crime.
But who? I mean, I'm sort of with Belinda here. Because, I mean, at the moment with this bill, it would be for the social media companies and Ofcom to decide whether it was misogyny or not. But I've been accused of misogyny for saying that I think more women criminals should be sent to prison, because at the moment far more men get sent to prison for the same offence as women. I was accused of misogyny for saying that. I mean, that clearly can't be misogyny. I mean, who decides? Belinda's right. If you say anything where you either criticise our woman or say that women should be treated in a different way, or particularly, you've accused of misogyny automatically.
I think, being accused of something and it actually being something is very different. But
So can I ask you that question? If Philip said to make sure, because it is more difficult for women to be sent to prison than men, and he said, well, we're having a fairness there, would you think that was misogyny?
I think that I need to hear more about what you said, because I'm not really sure.
Oh, there you go, and that's all I'm pointing out. Nobody knows.
Because, of course, this would all be looked at before you actually pursue it. Some things would be, some things wouldn't be. But
I think there are far more important issues for women, like rape convictions.
Yeah, but Belinda,
that's what women want.
But what I'm saying is,
we go to our next story, because we're going to run out of time.
Yes.
But I think this sort of explains how difficult it is to oversee this. Next story, Amy?
Well, it's kind of linked, actually. So, Jeremy Clarkson, we're back to Clarkson. So, apparently 3 female stars have pulled out of appearing on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire because they are concerned about that it could be seen to be condoning what was misogyny when he wrote about Meghan Markle, which received 6,000 complaints. So 3 stars are saying, we don't want to appear on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, we want to disassociate from it, distance ourselves from it.
Isn't this a better way, rather than having the crime in a way? Because people saying, I don't want to be associated with you, in a way, people are acting with their feet, saying, I just want to be... So that programme can no longer work, therefore you've lost a job. Is this a better way? And it's sort of empowering people, isn't it? And those 3 women have been very much empowered.
Yeah, I totally agree. He is being held to account for what he said through actions. So while ITV might have kept him on, this is starting to play out in the sense that he's not going to get the guests anymore. So surely how long can the show survive?
It sounds very, impressive that these ladies are taking a stand, but I also think it probably has something to do with the fact that they've been told, he's persona non grata, they're celebrities, these women, and they don't want their image to be suffered by someone who's been cancelled. And it is all part of the cancel culture. Now, he has apologised. What he said was really weird, and I didn't think it was a very nice thing to write, but it certainly wasn't misogynistic. It was mocking, and it was an odd joke to make. It didn't show that Jeremy had a hatred for all women.
Well, then why did he pick 3 women? He could have picked 3 people he dislikes, 3 concepts he dislikes. He chose 3 women. The insult was based on their inherent femininity. How is that not in some way misogynistic?
I don't think women should have special privileges on this. Yeah. I really don't.
If it attacked 3 men, would it be misandry?
Yeah,
probably.
Next story, Philip Davis.
Well, look, I've been doing some keenly swatting. I've been doing some research, and I'd be interested to know what you think about this. I asked every government department what their civil service headcount was, and I got a reply from 15 government departments, and I asked them what their headcount was before COVID and what it is now. These figures what the figures were in November 22, because that's the latest figures that they had. Total pre-COVID staffing levels in these 15 government departments was 314,506. The total at November 2022, 353,947. Now, it's gone up by 39,441, 12.5% increase. Now, the reason I mentioned it is because the PCS union have been going on strike this week. And one of the reasons they've gone on strike is that they want job security as part of their negotiation. And I thought, no wonder they want job security when they've got an inflated number of civil servants at the moment because of COVID. In fact, unbelievably, I asked how many civil servants were working on COVID matters, and out of those 15 government departments, 360 civil servants are still working on COVID matters. Although that does include producing the response to the COVID inquiry. But 360 is a hell of a lot of civil servants just working on that. And so I can see now why the PCS want job security, because I would hope that the government would say, well, now COVID's finished, we need to start shedding some of these posts, and no doubt the union want to get rid of them. Just to give a bit of flesh on the bones, the biggest percentage increase in the civil servants was the health department, you might expect. They were up 125% on their pre-COVID levels, but they're still there. The biggest numerical increase was in the Ministry of Justice, who had an extra 12,272 civil servants in their department. 3 departments did have a decline: DCMS, Foreign Office and Ministry of Defence. And the department with the most civil servants working on COVID was, any guesses?
It's like a pub quiz.
Yeah,
Go on, which one is it? Which was the department?
Education. 185 civil servants in education still working on COVID matters. But I think, there's so much fat in the civil service. And
but how do you know it's fat? How do you not know it's necessary?
Well, they seem to manage perfectly well beforehand.
I don't know about that. And I think it's nice to see numbers going up somewhere in public services.
Civil servants, more civil servants, the better.
I think when you take COVID's over, I don't see any sign of that. COVID is still very, very much an issue in our society, and if we want to go for prevention over it causing us problems like it did before, then of course we need people working on it still.
There are far
1 in 40 people have COVID at the moment.
I think most people would say we have gone past if you would call it a COVID crisis, we've moved on.
Of course.
I guess what I'd be looking at is the number of job vacancies in the country, full stop. You've got 1.3 million, so there are other jobs to be doing. And I guess it's balancing out the economy. Do we need more civil servants or do we need more people in business? And it seems to me that business is crying out for people. 80% of business is saying we can't find people applying for a job.
If we're going to increase the number of people in the public sector, surely there should be nurses and teachers, people on the front line. We don't need more pen pushings.
Is it either or?
We don't need more pen pushers in the civil service, do we?
Well, we don't know what they're doing, do we? We need to get a little...
I see much of it at close hand, and I don't see a great return on investment. What do you think?
Well, I'm not sure they're running very much efficiently. The border crisis, the delays with the EU reform bill. They say, we're delaying passing the EU reform bill because, it's too tough and we don't have enough people working on it. And yet the numbers keep going up and up. And this is all coming from the public purse. What are they doing? How are they working from home?
We'd be interested in productivity, i.e. the work output, rather than the people who are there. And most people who are waiting for a driving licence, a passport or anything to do with a civil servant at the moment have got huge delays. But look, what do you think? Our viewers do email us, let us know. Now, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak entered number 10, promising to earn our trust. But 3 months into the job, he's been plagued by strikes and question over the behaviour of some of his cabinet ministers.
We're joined now by Catherine Forster, who's here to talk us through the big political stories of the week. Catherine, thanks for joining us. Obviously, Nadhim Zahawi's gone. We don't know what's going to happen to Dominic Raab. What's the latest on Dominic Raab, do we think?
Well, pressure is certainly building, isn't it? Because when this investigation was first ordered by Rishi Sunak before Christmas, at that point there were 2 formal complaints. Now there's 8. It involves 24 people. Another dozen or more colleagues have backed up those claims. We've had people like anti-Brexit campaigner Gina Miller wading in now yesterday. But Dominic Raab is holding firm. He's saying he's absolutely done nothing wrong. He thinks he's going to clear his name. And, of course, bullying is very subjective, isn't it? But there is a large number, obviously, of people who feel that they were treated very badly by him, not just as Foreign Secretary, but also as Justice Secretary and as Brexit Secretary.
There's a lot of people saying it's because he's a very strong Brexiteer, and obviously Gina Miller would come in there, that actually he's the one being bullied and forced out of a job. Any validity in that?
Well, certainly some people are saying that lots of people in the civil service don't like his agenda, don't like what he stands for, don't like what he would like to push through, and it's in their interest to get him removed. But I would say that the numbers, I mean, 24 specific people complaining and dozens other backing them up. And people have gone publicly on record saying.
And what do they say? If a story lasts for like longer than 7 days, that's the problem. Whether it is or isn't, unfortunately, in politics, if you become the story, it's pretty much your career's over. That's an unfortunate thing with politics.
Yeah, and the thing is, we don't know when this investigation will conclude. It might be next week. It might be weeks down the line. Dominic Raab could say, Jake Berry, former Tory party chairman, today has been suggesting that he should stand down because it's sucking all the oxygen, isn't it, out of Rishi Sunak's trying to get a message across. That doesn't seem very likely at this point, though, does it? But it is doing the government real damage.
And, of course, we've now got a talk of an imminent return for Liz Truss, and Boris Johnson's out there talking about piling on the problems for Rishi Sunak. It doesn't seem that their interventions are designed to be helpful, does it?
No, it really doesn't. I mean, normally when a new Prime Minister comes in, they get a honeymoon period, a bit of a bounce in the polls. He's had none of that. And also, of course, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, it's not like they lost an election. They've got unfinished business. They both feel that they were pushed out unfairly, that they were actually right, and they've got a legacy or a message to protect. And
interesting, it's not just them, although obviously they are the figurehead at the top. They do have supporters, some of whom champion them more than they themselves. People might say Nadine Dorries is pushing for Boris to be there more than Boris is pushing to be there.
Yeah, and Jacob Rees-Mogg was saying the other day that Boris Johnson would be perfect for Conservative Party chairman.
Just to make life more difficult for Rishi Sunak.
I don't think that's going to fly. And we had the People's Poll yesterday. I know many Conservative MPs and many Conservative voters feel that they should never have got rid of Boris Johnson, that Boris Johnson still has the electoral magic. But the People's Poll we had yesterday, about 55% of people surveyed there said they were opposed or strongly opposed to Boris Johnson coming back to cabinet, let alone
Amy, do you feel sorry for Rishi with all of these big egos on the backbenches?
I feel sorry for the Conservatives that they've been pushed to, like, go over to the dirty washing basket, fish around for the thing that stinks the least and then spray it with Lynx Africa, which is what I believe they're doing with Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, raking up the old rubbish. It's a shame.
So do you feel sorry for Rishi, even if that?
Yeah, I do.
So you don't think they're pushing themselves forward? You don't think it's Boris and Liz? You think it's other people, the way you said that, raking them up?
I imagine Boris will always push himself, and perhaps Liz, actually. But I think Rishi was the least bad of the three. So, yeah, perhaps I do feel slightly sorry for him. But I think they just need to... if they want to survive...
It's an endorsement of sorts, isn't it?
Reluctant support. What I would love to see from the Conservatives is them to move away from that 2019 intake. If they move away from that, they might stand a chance.
Do you feel sorry for Rishi?
Not at all. I think he reaps what he sows. This is exactly what I would expect to happen. You know, a lot of people look at how Rishi got to power and think actually he had to trample on a few heads and to get there. Perhaps, you know, not having the consent of the Conservative Party voters, and that this is bound to happen. That his demons will come and haunt him.
See, it's tough at the top, and it's tough when you get there.
It's tougher at the bottom.
As a Prime Minister, as you say, when others have had to step down. But coming up, the Princess of Wales has launched a new early years campaign, attempting to shine the light on the crucial first 5 years of a child's life. We'll be speaking to Kate Silverton about this, so don't go anywhere.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 10:25. The Princess of Wales has launched a new early years campaign, attempting to shine a light on the crucial first few years of a child's life. It's set to run for at least 5 years and has been described by a Kensington Palace spokesman as the princess's life's work.
Well, we're joined now by the author and broadcaster turned child therapist, Kate Silverton. Lovely to see you. Now, I have to say, from a fantastic journalist, why did you give it all up to pursue your work with children?
Well, it's been, my life's work, actually. My academic background is in child psychology, and I think really becoming a mum was what prompted it, because I was lucky enough to have access to all these incredible psychiatrists and neuroscientists when we first became parents. My husband's in the military, and 6 weeks in walked in saying, "Oh my God, why does nobody tell you it's this hard? Getting my green beret was easier than this." And it really prompted this curiosity of, well, actually, what do we need to know? And once you understand the science, it blew my mind, and I wrote the book, first of all, because I thought every parent needs to know this. It's made my life so much easier, and I feel like I can parent more confidently and for future mental health. But also I wanted to walk the walk and retrain as a therapist, and I have to say I love it. I love my work now. I'm working, I volunteer in a school, I'm getting my hours to register, I finished my training, and I'm working with very vulnerable children and doing very sort of deep therapeutic interventions. And I absolutely love it, and I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about this campaign because it aligns with everything.
We're glad to see you on TV. That's all I can say. We're glad to have you back on.
So tell us why this campaign's so important, Kate.
It's so important because I think, for starters, what science has shown us now, it's been around for a very long time, but this is why the princess's work is so key. What we experience when we're very young shapes the adult we become. It is absolutely fundamental in terms of our future resilience, in terms of our future mental health. And this, what you're seeing now in this claymation that has been produced is sort of charts the progress of a little girl, Layla, from baby through to 5. And you can see all those neuron connections that are being made in her brain as she experiences life and the relationships that she has with those around her. It's absolutely fundamental. And I think I didn't realise that our brain starts developing from just a few weeks post-conception, and lots of associations and neuronal connections are being made during that time, and it's absolutely fundamental. We talk so much about adult mental health now, well, we can track it all back to childhood, so it's vital.
And is that what we're saying as we look at maybe antisocial behaviour, as we look at the increase in violence, or we look at relationships that aren't holding as people are adults? Are we saying it is this 0 to 5 years that we now as a society need to put more emphasis on?
As a society, actually, I produced a panorama just on that, looking at violence and visiting prisons. Scotland's doing an amazing work in this regard, actually, in terms of becoming trauma-informed, understanding that we learn what we live. So it's not to say for anybody who's already had a tough childhood that that's the end of it, because we keep our brain is sort of still plastic, as it were. We can keep sort of still learning and changing and developing. But I think as a society, if we start really supporting the early years and understanding the science and what drives, sort of this campaign actually coming together, we'll all benefit. All of society will benefit.
And what's it been like working with the Princess of Wales, Kate?
Well, she's wonderful. I gave a speech, sort of hosted the event for the pre-launch, and I just said, I've been on this journey sort of kind of alongside, because for her it's been at least 10 years of working with these incredible professors and neuroscientists behind the scenes. She's absolutely passionate. And I said, for those of us who are now working as mental health professionals, what she does is shine this incredible spotlight, and she's passionate about the science. As I say, it's been for her more than a 10-year journey. And I just spoke about her compassion and what I described as her ardent dedication. And it really is that. She really does care. And I think that's really important for people to know. She's serious about this, and it's going to be a long-term campaign. And I love it. And all the people that I work with, all the charities that I'm working with, everyone is absolutely thrilled, because we're all on this journey with her.
Kate Silverton, I want to thank you very much indeed, and it's great to see you on the screen again. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
What did you make of that, Belinda? Are you into the early years?
I am. I think it's actually fantastic. And I was brought up one of four. My mum had 4 under 5. I had 4 children under 5. And the pearls of wisdom my mum gave me were all about the 0 to 5 years. It was all about, don't give your children options. You tell them what they're having for supper. You don't say, what would you like for supper? If they fall over and it's not a serious injury, resist going to them, because you're going to bring up a child who likes to receive attention, every time they hurt themselves. And actually, it's quite good for children to be able to self-calm themselves and get themselves back off the floor and crack on with life. All these little bits of pearls of wisdom.
You're a hard taskmaster.
Hard task. I ran my house like a ship, and my mum said, if you get the children between 0 and 5 in that wonderful bubble of discipline but oodles of love, they're going to be much better behaved as teenagers. And the impact is huge, because teenagers need hugely different coping mechanisms now to when we were young in the 90s. So I do think mental resilience is really good to teach at a very young age.
Amy?
Well, I don't think you could talk about early years without talking about childcare. And childcare in the UK currently costs, per each child, 14 grand a year. You could send your child to a private prep school for that. So I think if Kate wants to talk about early years, I love what she's done, but I think she needs to go further and talk about proper investment and affordable childcare, because that's how we help early years. And also, can I just point out that it's still legal to smack your child in England?
I think it should be. I don't believe in criminalising parents for doing... So if they don't leave a mark, that's why. If they leave a mark, then that's a different thing.
I think that's...
But smacking on a,
We could have an hour-long debate
Two things.
about that.
Discipline for children, I totally believe is important. And I also think this is about what the parent and the family are doing from 0 to 5, not giving it to the state to look after.
Well, who's going to pay for the child?
But anyway,
we must move on, because we could debate those things for hours.
And we will on another show.
We will indeed. A bill currently passing through Parliament, first introduced by Lib Dem MP Vera Hobhouse, looks to make employers vicariously liable for harassment carried out by third parties unless they show they took all reasonable steps to prevent it.
Is this more unnecessary and unhelpful legislation, putting more hurdles in the way of already struggling businesses? Here to discuss this and where the responsibility of a boss ends is the General Secretary of the Freedom Speech Union, Toby Young. So, Toby, is this yet more legislation being put in the way of the bosses of businesses in the UK?
Yeah, I fear it is, Esther. I think you can understand the rationale behind this bill. The rationale is that croupiers, say, working in casinos, at the moment, employers aren't liable if they're harassed by punters, by customers of that casino. When this new workers' protection bill becomes law, employers will be liable, so they'll have to take steps to do what they can to prevent employees of casinos from being harassed by customers. So you can understand the rationale. It's designed to protect, in particular, women and girls. But there are going to be unintended consequences. And the Free Speech Union's real concern is about the impact this will have on external speakers at universities. And we're worried that it may lead to more no platforming. And the reason we're worried about that is that at present, visiting speakers at universities are third parties from the point of view of the Equality Act 2010. So if they say something that a student thinks constitutes harassment, often just because the student disagrees with what they're saying, that can't be at present a reason for no platforming the speaker. But when this new bill becomes law, what it will mean is that the university is liable if a student or member of staff feels harassed because they disagree profoundly with something that's going to be said by, or something that's being said by, a visiting speaker. So we're concerned that this could lead to fewer people being invited, fewer external speakers being invited onto campus to put forward contentious, controversial points of view that some students, some staff are likely to find offensive.
I guess, Toby, it all depends on what you define as a reasonable step for somebody to take to try and prevent it, which is in the bill, and obviously which ultimately would presumably be for a tribunal to decide. I mean, could the bill not be, people could say, well, that wasn't a reasonable step, that would have been a disproportionate
Well, I'm
step.
thinking, going back to the example of a casino, I'm sure the security there, if anything was going wrong, they'd be removed. So I'm guessing there is a boss, a good boss would be doing it.
In terms of the free speech element
Yeah.
of it, I mean, does it necessarily mean that your fears would be brought into account? It might be that nobody would think that would be a reasonable step, Toby, so maybe you should be reassured by that.
Well, I think there are some protections for free speech built into the Equality Act. As you say, Phil, it has to be reasonable for someone to claim that they feel harassed by a particular third party. And it might be that a student claiming that inviting, say, a gender-critical feminist like Kathleen Stock onto campus, if they say they feel harassed by the presence of someone whose views they find profoundly disagreeable, isn't reasonable. And so the university couldn't be expected to take reasonable steps to prevent the harassment of that student. And the Free Speech Union has been working with the Government Equalities Office to try and build various free speech protections into this workers' protection bill. And so if the speaker in question is just talking about a matter of social, moral, religious or political importance, and if they're not directly addressing the particular student who claims to feel harassed, then it wouldn't be reasonable for the university to take steps to prevent that harassment taking place. But we're concerned that those protections aren't robust enough. I mean, for instance, if a trans student asked a question of a visiting gender-critical feminist and the answer they received wasn't to their liking, because it would be a direct interaction between the student and the third party, the student, I think, could claim that they felt harassed, and it's not obvious that they wouldn't then have a claim, and the university might not then be in trouble.
When you've just said in the past you've lost the argument, or you don't like the response, or you just weren't quick enough thinking on your feet, isn't that, are we trying to protect everybody, but we'll end up protecting nobody?
Well, the way this kind of thing works, Esther, is, I mean, I know it sounds unreasonable to prevent speakers saying things contentious or controversial that some students or staff at universities will find disagreeable. Who would want to do that in a university? Universities are supposed to be places of open discussion and debate. But the problem is these laws, these regulations can be weaponized by political activists. They'll point to this change to the Equality Act and say it now covers third parties that are going to be vulnerable students with protected characteristics who feel harassed if you invite this controversial speaker. Play it safe, don't invite them. That's our concern. It'll be how the law is interpreted and weaponized by political activists in collusion with people on the same side as them politically on the university administration.
Just very, very quickly, because we've run out of time already, but I just want to get your view. Front page of the Telegraph today is about the people in the Lords wanting to amend the online safety bill to make sure that online misogyny was not allowed, and that it was going back to the legal but harmful stuff to a certain extent, where companies who allowed it to happen would face a fine of 10% of their global turnover. What's your view of what the Lords are trying to do with that?
Well, I think, like the Workers' Protection Bill, it's understandable. You can see what they're trying to do, and I'm sure it's coming from a good place. But the worry is unintended consequences. And the $6 million question here is, would misogyny include people misgendering trans women, for instance, refusing to use their preferred gender pronouns, saying they don't think trans women are women? If you defined trans women as women, if you make it easier for people to self-identify as a different gender in law, as they're doing in Scotland, then would criticism, perfectly legitimate criticism of trans ideology, would a refusal to use a trans woman's preferred gender pronouns because you don't think it's possible to change sex, would that count as misogyny? And would that be criminalised?
Toby Young, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us this morning. Belinda, Amy, we've got to move on, but we'll see you later in the show.
I feel we came full circle. I feel we came full circle on that one.
I know that it was just whipping you up into a frenzy at that point, Amy.
But you'll be back at 11 o'clock to be whipped up into a frenzy. Now, coming up, we're joined by a woman who was the victim of a sexual assault who embarked on a remarkable journey to find justice. It's not a story you'll want to miss.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 10:42. Lots of you have been getting in touch with us this morning. Phil?
Keith says, I'm looking forward to hearing what Raab actually said to these complainants. Probably told them that they were not doing their jobs properly, which you're not allowed to do to civil servants, playing the bullying card and waiting for a weak Labour government.
And I've got Danny here says, Amy Nichol is certainly guilty of misandry, and now I've said that, I'm guilty of misogyny. And then Shirley says, I don't believe Clarkson is a misogynist. Yes, he was rude, and it was a horrible thing to say, but I don't think he can be classed as a misogynist. That's what we were talking about, basically confusion about what is misogyny. How would you police it? How would you oversee it?
Keep those views coming in. Now, we're joined now by a remarkable woman who was the victim of a sexual assault. She was told no crime had been committed, and it took years of persistence to persuade the CPS to prosecute her attacker. And she's now published a book about her story. Welcome, Emily Hunt.
Hi.
Tell us briefly, if you can, about what happened to you.
In 2015, I woke up cold and naked in a hotel bed next to a man I'd never seen before. And my last memory before that had been more than 5 hours before having lunch in a local restaurant. The police were called immediately. And I thought it would happen like on TV, where the police are there and you're safe. And everything would go forward the way it's supposed to. There would be an investigation, and he'd be charged, and it would go in front of a jury. And I had no idea that that's just not what happens.
And why did it not happen?
And there's a lot of reasons. Fundamentally, we don't prosecute enough rapes in this country. We take a too conservative approach in a lot of ways. And in my case, it was just a combination of everything. I made mistake after mistake, mostly by not being perfect and being a deeply traumatized rape victim.
So what was your mistake after mistake? Were you having lunch with this person? Did you know them? Did you drink too much? What were the mistakes?
The first mistake is that my friend called the police and I didn't. So instantly I was attention seeking or doing it wrong or having been caught out on cheating on a boyfriend I didn't have. And then the next mistake was I had a hyperventilating panic attack. So again, seeking attention and acting over the top. I was demanding. I wanted to know what was happening. I was difficult because I refused to give them my clothes for evidence because they wouldn't give me anything else to wear. And they actually wrote down in their notebooks on the night that I was raped that I was being difficult because I didn't have an extra pair of clothes on me for them to take mine.
So, I mean, when you were told by the CPS that they weren't going to bring any charges against your attacker, many people would have accepted that that was just a fact of the matter. They'd have felt very let down, but they would have left it there, wouldn't they? Why did you sort of feel the need to keep going, and how did you persuade the CPS to change their mind?
I think it started because I didn't know what happened to me. So the last thing I remember is having lunch with my dad in a local restaurant. And then all of a sudden, I'm somewhere else next to somebody I've never seen before, completely terrified and having no idea what's happened. And nobody ever told me. And I had all of these gaps and I didn't know what was happening. So for a long time, I was asking the police to fill in the gaps for me. And I asked for the toxicology report, which they kept not giving me. And then nearly a year after I was attacked, I got the toxicology report. And I don't know what it was that I was looking for, but what I found was horrifying, because that's the first time I found out that my attacker was completely sober, and in possession of illegal drugs that he said were Viagra and LSD, but were never actually tested. And for me, it was in that moment that I realized, wait, actually, the system has failed me. There is something that's gone terribly wrong, because up until that point, until I started to piece things together, I thought this was my fault.
So had you been drugged, had you been taken advantage of, and this was what you didn't remember, this is where the time loss was, and the police just either didn't want to pursue it or it was a bit too difficult to prove?
Yeah, I think what's really hard is when it comes down to a consent case, we have the idea that it's really difficult to prove. My case is a little bit different because my suspect, in his interview given under caution, admits that the first thing he asked me was whether or not I was on drugs because I was acting in an incoherent way. He told the police that he thought I might be a bit mad or mentally ill because I wasn't making sense. There's CCTV of me literally falling over in front of the hotel room door. Also CCTV of me walking down the street so intoxicated that I basically can't move my arms.
So was this done to you, or had you got yourself this drunk?
I don't know. So there is the idea is that I suspect that there was a drink at the restaurant that was spiked. And the reason that I think that is my dad took a sip of that, and he doesn't remember getting home to Ireland. And my dad can hold his liquor. A sip of grappa was not going to knock him over. But for however I got into that state, a reasonable person would have known I couldn't have given consent and shouldn't have taken advantage.
But your attacker has been brought to justice now because of your persistence, and then you've now become an advisor to the government. How did that come about?
It's a little bit odd. I kind of just asked. I'd been doing all of this work. So in my public advocacy and trying to talk to people like you two and talking to journalists and politicians and working to change the law on voyeurism, I had to do a lot of research. And I had to know my stuff in order to open those doors. And over COVID, like a lot of people, I had a lot more time on my hands than usual. And so I started writing the book, and I didn't even really know what for. But as I kept going through it, I realized I know a lot about this. And so when I read that number 10 was really unhappy about the fall in rape prosecutions, I went to a contact, to go to a contact, to go to a contact, to ask to go in the door at number 10. And I had a conversation that I thought would be the first and last.
What an incredible journey, and hopefully something positive has come out of something so horrific.
Just tell us very quickly about the book. You know what?
So it's called We Need to Talk. It's available on Amazon and in some Waterstones and kind of everywhere, which is crazy and terrifying. But it's not just my story. It's about what we need to do better as a society to support rape victims so that people don't go through what I went through.
Well, Emily, you're a terrific inspiration to lots of people. I'm very pleased to know you. I think you're an amazing woman.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the hope that you give to other people as well and victims. And we wish you every success with the book.
Thank you so much.
And for your sheer tenacity,
Absolutely.
if I'm being
amazing,
honest.
remarkable.
Right, we've been reading out your views. We always do. We love them and we'll continue to do so. But some brave souls have decided to appear on screen with us this week to discuss the issues which matter most to them.
If you'd like to come on our show, you can email in on gbviews on gbnews.uk. And here's a couple who did. The Reverend James Pennington and Jill Parry. We're very pleased to see you both. Thank you very much. If I could start with you, James. You're a vicar. We can see that. Yeah. That's clear. What's getting you hot under the collar, under the dog collar, should I say, this week?
Well, good morning to you both. I think I'd like to share about my concerns and a lot of people's concerns about the current divisions in the church about marriage and human sexuality. And I think to try and maybe explain a bit why this is not just a kind of civil war in the Church of England and why this matters beyond that. So you can imagine there's the traditional view that I would argue the scriptural view that marriage is for one man, one woman, as it's always been understood. But there's this other view that it can be broadened out and that the church can bless in some way all kinds of other sexual relations that might happen. Now, in one sense, people might say, well, how much do I care about that particular issue? I don't know. But the bigger issue for the church is how we define what we believe. Where do we find the authority to decide what our teaching, what our belief is going to be, what we share with the world? What is this gospel that we're sharing with the world? And for me and for a lot of evangelical and more sort of orthodox folk, that has to be the Bible. That has to be the teachings of Jesus Christ and the rest of Scripture, the apostles and the prophets and so on, and understood with our brains. We use our reason, we use our mind. We're not insulated from the world. We're in it and we want to bring this amazing gospel message to the world. But Jesus says, if you want to follow me, then you must obey my teaching. That's the mark that he puts upon us. So this gospel that we have, we don't get editing rights. We can translate it, understand it, live it and share it. And when we do that, it transforms lives, it transforms the world. And that is our calling as the church. That's why we're here, to share this gospel of Jesus Christ. And I think this idea that somehow if we clash with society, that's a problem, is a problem. If you look at the history of the church, you think about Jesus. He said all these wonderful things and people didn't like it and they crucified him for it. Most of the apostles died as martyrs. And for hundreds of years, and still today around the world, the gospel, with all its wonderful light and power, causes
James, I feel
Yeah.
I've come to church with you today. I feel.
You get where I'm going anyway.
We've already heard tomorrow's sermon.
What I really hope is that we focus again back on
Let's bring Gillian in. Gillian, you're joining us from sunny Wales.
Yes.
What do you want to talk to us about?
Well, firstly, I'd like to thank you and GBTV for giving me, I'm just a coffee shop politician, this chance to have her say, which is really good. I'm a retired nurse, so my biggest concern is the NHS. Hands-on carers and nurses are on the coalface, so to speak, of our healthcare system. They work in ever-demanding, stressful situations and are almost always understaffed. These are the people who deserve a pay rise, not the nurse managers, pay grade 8 and above, who already have decent salaries and who effectively left the hands-on patient care to become administrators.
Can I
There's a
ask
culture.
you, Jill?
Yes.
Can I, because, you know, how would you, having spent all this time in the NHS, how would you make sure that the focus was on the front line and not on the managers? Because I think most of our viewers will agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
How are we going to do that? Because I think that's the biggest political question of all.
Yeah, well, I think there's a culture of jobs for the boys in the nursing funding that's been directed to managerial high-paid grade jobs to the detriment of vital patient care. I propose that a set-in-stone ratio of administrators to hands-on carers and nurses be calculated and set up as a working model for the NHS. This would mean that no new admin or managerial job could be created without employing an agreed number of new frontline patient-facing carers and nurses.
Jill, very interestingly, when you, at the start of the programme, Phil, were talking about the increase in civil service sort of numbers, where were they? How had they gone up by 12.5%? This is what we're talking about. What we need is the people who are doing the job, doing it, and not this increase of managers.
Jill, what do you think about nurses going on strike? What do you think about the nurses going on strike? Are you sympathetic to them, or do you think they shouldn't be doing it?
I'm sympathetic, but I'm sure that any nurse would make sure that the patients were all right before they made a stand. I'm pretty certain that that would be the case. I was a district nurse and I couldn't have gone on strike because of what I am. You know, I couldn't have left my patients, but I'm sure that the nurses were very careful. And it is a crisis situation, to be honest. You know, to work on a ward where you start off with, say, 5 people on a night shift, and then one gets sent somewhere else, and then an agency nurse comes in, and you're left with a staff nurse and two health carers, and it's not safe, and it is dangerous, and they're just these basic jobs aren't being cared enough about.
Jill, it also seems there's sort of quite a bit of tension and unhappiness between the people on the front row and the people who are as the managers. And I wonder, although it's come out as strike action, it's actually something that needs to be sorted internally within the NHS.
Yes, definitely. They need respect, and they work so hard. And that includes, you know, not just trained nurses, the carers. The carers are so vital to individual patient care. They're so vital. And the
Jill,
carers on the community,
we're going to have to end
hospital.
it there. So, Jill and James, thank you very much for being brave souls for coming on today. We're going to take a quick break, but coming back, we're going to speak to Liz Truss's key political ally about her comeback. Is she going to do it? And he's one of the leaders of the Conservative Growth Group, so don't go anywhere.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your weekend weather update. Most of us will be dry across England and Wales today. Some rain crossing Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's mild today, will be colder tomorrow, but an awful lot brighter. Here's the picture at the moment. High pressure in control, and we're between 2 weather fronts. In here, some pretty mild air, but this weather front is mixing things up a little bit, introducing cloud and rain to the Western Isles at the moment, and that rain will push steadily across Scotland and Northern Ireland during this morning. For most of England and Wales, it's dry, a bit of drizzle here and there on western coasts and hills, and some breaks in the cloud here and there to reveal a bit of sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England at times. There's the rain working its way through the central belt and down towards the east of Northern Ireland by the end of the afternoon. It is mild, temperatures 10, 11, 12, maybe even 13 Celsius. Feeling cooler though as the rain pushes in across parts of the north this afternoon. And through this evening, that rain will trickle into northern England and North Wales. It's kind of fizzling out as it sinks its way southwards, so not much rain at all across southern counties during the early hours. Behind it, clearer skies and colder air, so it will be a much colder night tonight compared to the one just gone. Fairly extensive frost, certainly in rural parts from the Midlands northwards, temperatures dipping below freezing, and even in some towns and cities. It does lead to a much brighter day tomorrow, though. Plenty of sunshine on offer. A bit of a breeze, perhaps, along some of these North Sea coasts, particularly Norfolk and in the far northwest. A bit more cloud maybe here, but generally plenty of blue sky, plenty of sunshine to come tomorrow. It will be a colder feeling day, certainly first thing, but in the afternoon, these temperatures 7 to 9 degrees, about average for the time of year with light winds. Won't feel too bad at all. The outlook is for much of the UK to remain fairly dry, certainly through the first half of next week, and staying colder than it is now, but still with temperatures around the February average.
I'm Camilla Tominey. Join me on GB News on Sunday mornings for a politics show with personality.
On TV, radio and online.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. You're watching and listening to GB News. This is Saturday morning with Esther and Phil, and we've got a great final hour for you coming up today.
Is it time for the over 50s to get off the golf course and back into work?
And somebody who is well into their 70s and manages to combine working and being on the golf course is Donald Trump. Well, we'll be looking at the prospects of him returning to the White House.
And after Henry VIII's pendant was found in a field by a metal detector, we'll be asking if there's going to be a surge in treasure hunters.
Well, I'm certainly interested. Anyway, as always, please keep your emails coming in gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. But first, here's the latest news with Tatiana.
Esther, thank you. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The family of missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, have insisted there's no evidence whatsoever that she fell into the River Wyre. Nicola's sister is urging people to keep an open mind after officers investigating her sister's disappearance say they believe she fell into the river while walking her dog. Ms Bulley vanished in Lancashire last Friday morning. The investigation is now focusing on a 10-minute window between 10 and 20 past 9 that's unaccounted for. Police say they're not treating her disappearance as suspicious, but as a tragic case of a missing person. Health leaders are calling on the government to show initiative to end the recent strikes. The NHS Confederation says the health service will struggle to clear backlogs and improve emergency care unless action is taken. They warn if it doesn't improve, it will risk patients suffering even longer waiting times than they do now. Thousands of nurses and ambulance workers will walk out on Monday in what many are calling the biggest strike day the NHS has ever seen. Former medical director Dr. Andrew Vallant says the ball is in the government's court.
Of course, they are worried about their salaries, but it's a feeling of lack of recognition of the work that they do, and then you see, and they look at other workers in the NHS who are desk-bound, who are working normal days, and they're working 8 or 12-hour shifts without breaks. and they say, why can't we get better recognition for what we do?
Meanwhile, health officials are encouraging 16 to 49-year-olds to get their autumn COVID booster before the NHS scales down its vaccine programme to focus on patients at risk. The NHS says hundreds of thousands of appointments are available up until the 12th of February for those within that age bracket. After this date, the jabs will only be offered to those considered to be at risk of serious illness. COVID infections, though, in the UK have dropped for a fourth week in a row. At least one British sailor has been taken to hospital after problems with water supplies on board their warship. HMS Portland has returned to base as a precautionary measure. The Daily Telegraph newspaper reports the wrong chemicals were put into the vessel's fresh water system, but the error was flagged quickly by staff. The ship has returned to Portsmouth and the issue is being investigated. US officials say a second suspected Chinese spy balloon has been spotted moving over Latin America. It's after one was seen flying over sensitive military sites in America yesterday. Earlier, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, called off a visit to Beijing, calling the move a clear violation of US sovereignty, and he would be prepared to resume his visit when conditions allow. China maintains it was in fact a civilian weather airship which had been blown off course. And the Princess of Wales has launched a photo-sharing campaign on social media to raise awareness of the importance of early years development. Kate led the campaign by posting a photograph of herself as a baby with her father. It's all part of her Shaping Us campaign, which has drawn support from the likes of rapper Professor Green and presenter Fern Cotton. She's hoping that people will follow suit over the weekend. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Esther and Philip.
Thanks, Tatiana. Lots and lots of views coming in. Esther, what have you got?
Well, I'm going to read two here because it's all about the figures you gave out for the increase in numbers of civil servants. And Gavin says all civil servants should all have to reapply for a post, as the large majority strongly believe they are running the country. It is reported that many civil servants have picked out what tasks they want to do and refuse to do the others. It's no wonder the UK is in such chaos. And Claudette here says, I've come to the sad conclusion that it's the civil service that are running the country. Never felt so depressed about the Conservative Party in my life.
David says, I'm afraid the Conservative Party no longer represents the views of its members. Esther is wasted on the backbenchers. No one ever says I'm wasted on the backbenchers. Esther's wasted on the backbenchers. And I agree with Peter Bow that she should be the next party chairman. I got worried when she had too much sun and supported Jeremy Hunt for our leader. This is a man deeply unpopular with the members and should be nowhere near Downing Street. So you've been on the dark side, you've come back.
Yes,
you've come back.
You show we don't edit these the views that we read out. We read them all out.
And lots of views about Dominic Raab as well. Maggie says Dominic Raab should stay in office. It's not the Labour opposition. If it's not the Labour opposition trying to pick members of the government off, it's the various civil servants, and we shouldn't let them get away with it.
And if it's not that, it's the media.
But, well, indeed. But James says, how has Dominic Raab risen to the position he now occupies if he's a bully? Very disappointing. Keep those views coming in. Now, is Liz Truss set for a political comeback? Whispers of a resurgence are getting louder after several MPs have reportedly begun to join a WhatsApp group once used to bolster her leadership.
Dubbed the Conservative Growth Group, the MPs still believe in Truss's vision of a high-growth, low-tax Britain. We're joined now by one of the leaders of the group, MP for North East Hampshire, that's Ranil Jayawardena, and great to see you this morning. Now, look, there's lots of gossip about this group, Ranil. You know, is it about bringing Liz back? Is it a lobbying group? Is it a pressure group? Is it a policy group? Reveal today, as you're one of the key people in it, one of the front people. What is it?
Well, look, great to be with you. And, I mean, ultimately, the Prime Minister himself has actually said we've got to go for growth. It's one of his 5 priorities. And we believe, I think, in the Conservative Party, that it's right to go for growth by slashing red tape, by targeting tax cuts and refocusing the state. And so that's what this group's about. It's about coming up with the right ideas, as we see it, to transform the country. And, you know, I think there's a whole host of things that we can do that will really secure growth now as well as growth in the years ahead, because Western economies have flatlined for far too long, and we've now got to make sure that.
Well, I can
we
say
take tough decisions.
that's music to our ears. So it sounds it's policy, not launching a Liz comeback.
It's absolutely about policy, not personality. Liz is absolutely someone who believes in going for growth. But I'm delighted that we've got over 50 colleagues who've joined this group and are all focused on making sure that we've got new policies for the NHS, new policies for the environment, new policies for quality of life across this country. And it doesn't involve more spending and more tax rises.
People might say that, you know, you, the Liz Truss administration, you were in her cabinet, you had your chance, you blew it, and so that a period of silence and letting Rishi Sunak and his government get on with it would be appreciated. What would you say to people who said that?
Well, I'd say that we want to work with the government, and I had a very good meeting briefly with Jeremy Hunt this week. He's going to see us again in the not too distant future, so that we're actually engaging with the government. So this is a team effort. We know as a party that there's a lot of work to be done, and we want to make sure that the best ideas are there, not only for now, but also going into the manifesto and going past the next election.
Ranil, can I just ask a couple of quick questions? How many members have you got in this group? How big is it?
We've got over 50.
Over 50. Is Liz a member of this group?
She's very much a supporter of the group.
OK, well, I'm not sure what that is, a member or supporter. OK, are you launching in the House on Monday? I'm saying this because I've read so much in the papers. I'm just trying to work out what's right or not. Are you launching on Monday in the House?
We have met every Wednesday for the last 3 weeks, and we'll keep doing that. In fact, we had to take an evening off this last Wednesday because of the 1922 event. But we have indeed met regularly, and we will continue to do so.
Well, you answered my last two questions in one. When do you meet and how often? So you've done them. Well done.
Just quickly, Rana, while you're here, you were in Liz Truss's cabinet. You're very much an insider. And obviously you still want to pursue the policy agenda that she sort of was elected as leader on. Where do you think it went wrong for Liz? Why do you think, it didn't work out for her?
Well, Liz is going to set out her own thoughts in her own way, but I think it's very clear that there were many challenges that were faced by government, both in terms of structure, in terms of some of the other organisations that we were working with. Indeed, I'm sorry to say, unfortunately, the IMF said that Liz shouldn't cut taxes, and now says this week that we need to cut taxes. That shows some of the challenges we face. But equally, there were things that could have been done differently, and Liz acknowledges that, and I think we'll say more on that in the coming days.
Do we know exactly when she's going to be saying? Have you got a time scale for when she's going to be saying that? Can you really exclusively tell us when this is going to be all revealed to the nation?
I think you wouldn't be at all surprised to find out a little bit more this weekend.
A little bit more this weekend. Right. There isn't much left. That means tomorrow. Ranil, thank you very much indeed. And I have to say, it's music to most of our viewers' ears that you will be looking for high growth and low tax.
And please tell us whenever you've got any policy announcements that you want to make. You come and tell us on GB News first.
Very good. Great to see you.
Bye.
Bye, thank you. To take a look through the papers, we're still delighted to be joined by Belinda and Amy. Thank you very much. What else has caught your eye? Amy, do you want to go first?
It caught my eye. It's in The Sun and it's about the coronation. So there is no suggestion from Buckingham Palace that Harry and Meghan will not be invited. So it means that they will be invited. And I think this is interesting because it shows that the royal family aren't taking this whole furore perhaps as to heart as the rest of us. And it maybe nods towards a reconciliation. Maybe.
Will they accept the invitation? That's the
question,
I think now, isn't it?
But when I was looking at this story, I found a really interesting statistic from the public. So whilst maybe I suggested it might be a reconciliation, the public are not convinced, and only 1% of people currently think that Harry and Meghan's Netflix series and the book Spare was in any way intended to prompt a reconciliation with the family, and the majority of people think it was just all to make a bit of cash.
And you know, I think I'd be in that group as well. But what I will say is, you know, Charles is thinking long-term, isn't he? He's not just thinking Netflix today, tomorrow, the headlines today or tomorrow. He is thinking royal family hundreds of years hence, I'm thinking, yeah?
You see, I don't think he should be invited. I don't think they should be invited. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is not a family occasion, it's a state occasion. And Harry and Meghan, it seems to me, have set out their absolute disdain for the institution that they're now being invited to support.
Does it show Charles is weak?
Well,
Linda?
no, I think they should be invited for two reasons. One, I think it shows that the royal family are above the sort of Kardashian, spiteful, victimhood equals currency business that Harry and Meghan have been in the last couple of years. And they're above all of that. Very dignified response to still include them in the coronation. However, if King Charles is clever enough to sort of put them at the back and, you know, make sure that they're treated just as any other guests were, 10 million points for humiliation there. It's going to be humiliating for Harry and Meghan.
He might think, well, they're doing well and getting lots of publicity in America and around the world. Maybe he's cashing in
Exactly, but as long as he doesn't reconcile, because I think that would not just show weakness, but it would be a sort of admission of guilt as well if he was to start apologising to Harry. And remember, the country feels attacked by the couple. But yes, moving on, I have the front page of the Daily Express. It is about Boris saying tax cuts will win Tories the next election. And I just found it a bit funny because he goes on in the article to say, you know, Rishi should be talking up the benefits of Brexit and making tax cuts. And I'm thinking two things. A lot of the public will be thinking, well, you guys raised the taxes, so the bare minimum you should be doing is decreasing them. There's no medals for that. It's a bare minimum. And secondly, all the Conservative Party have really been doing since 2019 is just talking about Brexit. There's not been a huge amount of action domestically. Yes, with the vaccine rollout in Ukraine, but domestically there's been delays. It's all talk, no action. So it's actually less talk about it that we need. We need more action from the Tories.
Any sympathy that we've been in sort of lockdown and COVID for 2 years, or do you think that's wearing a bit thin?
So I would say there is sympathy for the first lockdown, but I think the over-cautious lockdown policy was a choice the Conservative Party made, and that hit us economically, and also the crazy sort of COVID regulations in terms of hitting up a hospitality industry. They suffered
but it was all the political classes for the lockdown.
Will tax cuts win the Conservatives the next general election?
Maybe the audience of the Daily Express will enjoy that one, because Tories do love a tax cut, that's for sure. But I don't think you can talk about the financial impact of COVID and the war without mentioning the financial impact of Brexit, which has dwarfed both of those things.
Well, we had a cracking debate yesterday between Nigel Farage and John Bercow about that on our show.
And actually, the timing's wrong for that, actually, because the country and the GDP were growing right the way through, you know, beating Germany and Italy and everywhere. It's only the last year. Therefore, if you look at the timeline, it's actually the lockdown of the world for COVID for 2 years that's been the big impact, not Brexit, actually.
Now we are below Russia.
The two. Now,
sanctioned Russia. We're still below.
It's not to do with Brexit, Amy, and we all know it's not to do with Brexit, but good try.
We're not going to rehearse that debate again today, but another time, definitely.
But I'm loving you bringing your spoon in today. That's why you are here, and we love
That's
her
why we
for
love you so much, Amy, because you always know what box
to needle.
Yeah, exactly. So, page 21 of The Sun, on a lighter note, well, maybe not a lighter note, to be perfectly honest, on a less serious note, maybe not a lighter note, it's got the top 10 funeral hits, the things that are most likely to be blasted out at funerals. And I don't know what people think might be in here, but...
Go on, anybody guess what was like at your
funeral? I can guess.
Go on.
Go on.
Angels by Robbie Williams.
Number 5.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
Tick these off.
Go on.
I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
No. My Way, Frank Sinatra.
That is number 1.
Thank you. Knew it.
Number 1.
I've been to too many funerals.
There's also You'll Never Walk Alone by Jerry and the Pacemakers. Obviously, that gets played at Liverpool funerals a lot, I would imagine.
What about Highway to Hell?
I like
There's Bat Out of Hell.
Bat Out of Hell?
Louis Armstrong, you've got all the time in the world, and that's not made it. That's not made the cut.
Stairway to Heaven. I don't know about any of these. I mean, my granddad actually had My Way played at his
Tell us the top 5.
The top 5 are My Way, Frank Sinatra, You'll Never Walk Alone, Jerry and the Pacemakers. Over the Rainbow, Judy Garland. Always Look on the Bright Side of Life.
I love that one.
Monty Python and Angels by Robbie Williams. I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I think I'd go for hymns. I'd have Jerusalem at mine.
Yeah, me too. I think Nimrod. I quite like
Conservative to the end.
Well, I'm taking that as a compliment, Amy. I'm taking that as a compliment.
I've got something completely different, and again, a bit more fun here. It was in the FT. I'm only buying 5 things in 2023, and this is a lady about clothes, what she's going to buy. Combination of being good for the environment. Do we really need everybody constantly buying stuff? And actually, we're buying more than sort of however many items a year, and it's gone up something like 20-30% our purchases since the 1970s. So, a couple of items, if you could only buy 5 things all year, what would it be?
Just definitely a little black dress. Just because you can accessorise it differently every time you go out to make it look like a new. A good pair of Spanx. Essential, changes every outfit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say just a really lovely jumper that you don't have to dry clean. Nothing dry clean.
Quickly.
I just have 5 pairs of knickers and hand wash them in the sink with soap.
Fantastic. You are as cheap as chips. That sounded terrible. I mean, for what you're buying this year, and your footprint will be wonderful environmentally. Linda, thank you very much indeed. Amy, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, multi-agency searches for missing mother of 2, Nicola Bulley, have entered a 9th day as her heartbroken friends and family, including 2 young daughters, hold on to hope for her return.
On Friday, the police said that their main working hypothesis is that she fell into the River Wyre and that this is not suspicious, but a tragic case of a missing person. We're now joined by GB News national reporter Theo Chikomba, who has the latest for us. Theo, what can you tell us?
Good morning. There's more police presence now here in St Michael's on Wyre since the early hours of this morning as investigations continue into the disappearance of mother of 2, Nicola. Over the last few days, we heard yesterday in a press conference that a number of agencies, an unprecedented number of agencies, have been working tirelessly. And again, this morning, I've just seen some officers are searching on the riverbank alongside here as they continue their work. The police are asking members of the public if they do have any information, please do get in touch with 101, and if it is absolutely urgent, please do call 999. They've also stressed that people should stop speculating just in case it causes some if the family are hearing this, that will cause some distress for them. We've heard in the last few days about how they've amped up their searches, going from house to house, looking at CCTV footage. Indeed, some of the members of the community and friends have been out on the roadside, urging people to get in touch if they do have any information. Late last night, there was a big billboard, an electronic one, with her picture on it and some details. If you do have anything to share with the police, do get in touch with them. So the efforts here are still ongoing, and family and friends are hoping to hear some news from the police as part of their investigations.
Theo, thank you very much indeed for giving us that update. That's Theo there out the scene in Lancashire. Been working amazingly hard. He's been there all hours of the day to keep us
up to speed with what's going on. Now going to take a break, and coming up after the break, should over 50s be coming back out of retirement, getting off the golf course, getting into work? We'll be joined by the CEO of Restless to talk about this. See you soon.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your weekend weather update. Most of us will be dry across England and Wales today. Some rain crossing Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's mild today, will be colder tomorrow, but an awful lot brighter. Here's the picture at the moment. High pressure in control, and we're between 2 weather fronts. In here, some pretty mild air, but this weather front is mixing things up a little bit, introducing cloud and rain to the Western Isles at the moment, and that rain will push steadily across Scotland and Northern Ireland during this morning. For most of England and Wales, it's dry, a bit of drizzle here and there on western coasts and hills, and some breaks in the cloud here and there to reveal a bit of sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England at times. There's the rain working its way through the central belt and down towards the east of Northern Ireland by the end of the afternoon. It is mild, temperatures 10, 11, 12, maybe even 13 Celsius. Feeling cooler though as the rain pushes in across parts of the north this afternoon. And through this evening, that rain will trickle into northern England and North Wales. It's kind of fizzling out as it sinks its way southwards, so not much rain at all across southern counties during the early hours. Behind it, clearer skies and colder air, so it will be a much colder night tonight compared to the one just gone. Fairly extensive frost, certainly in rural parts from the Midlands northwards, temperatures dipping below freezing, and even in some towns and cities. It does lead to a much brighter day tomorrow, though. Plenty of sunshine on offer. A bit of a breeze, perhaps, along some of these North Sea coasts, particularly Norfolk and in the far northwest. A bit more cloud maybe here, but generally plenty of blue sky, plenty of sunshine to come tomorrow. It will be a colder feeling day, certainly first thing, but in the afternoon, these temperatures 7 to 9 degrees, about average for the time of year with light winds. Won't feel too bad at all. The outlook is for much of the UK to remain fairly dry, certainly through the first half of next week, and staying colder than it is now, but still with temperatures around the February average.
I'm Camilla Tominey. Join me on GB News on Sunday mornings for a politics show with personality on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind, and we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
and right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back at 11:27. Lots of you have been getting in touch, as always, fantastic.
Mel says, as a proud registered surgical nurse for 40 years myself, I know these strikes are a last option, but very necessary. The tipping point has come for the NHS. The management takes so many risks with minimal staffing on wards every day, not just strikes. We know it's not safe and we tell the bosses so. It's like they just nod their heads, cross their fingers and hope nobody dies.
It seems the management, and it seems the ever-expanding management's a problem. Val says, why on earth are nurses going to university? Surely it'd be better for them to work on the wards, getting practical experience with days off to attend lectures.
And we spoke to Kate Silverton earlier about her early years campaign with the Princess of Wales. Elaine says, I was a nursery nurse for 35 plus years. Early years is the most important years in the development of children. I trained the 0 to 7 years. Show me the child, and early years are so important in their development to be decent, caring human beings.
Absolutely. Well, we've had, as I said, lots of you getting in touch. Do keep getting in touch with us. We love it. Now, the government is keen to get older workers back into the office amid fears of a labour shortage in the economy. The Chancellor has said that life doesn't just have to be about going to the golf course, and for people in their 50s above, they need to get back in the workplace.
We're joined now by Stuart Lewis, the Chief Executive of the campaign group Rest Less, and Connor Axiotis, Director of Communications at the Adam Smith Institute. Perhaps, Stuart, we can start with you first. Why are so many people in their 50s wanting to be out of the workplace? I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse, to be perfectly honest, than kicking my heels at home every day.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear, very few over 50s have retired and are actually on the golf course right now. The real question we should be asking ourselves about how we enable more over 50s back into the workforce. So if you look at the ONS data, there's over 650,000 economically inactive over 50s who say they want a job. So until we fix the demand side with employers welcoming them back and creating the right flexible working opportunities, the reality of trying to force people back is going to have the similar effect to pushing on a piece of string. When you look at the ONS data, the majority of people, the rise in economic inactivity, it's come from poor health. So that's the number one driver. It's not retirement.
But obviously something happened then, and so what are you saying? Are you saying as 500,000 people left the workplace between 2019 to 2021, are you saying then that it was lockdown that has had an impact on the over 50s? Is that what we're now saying? Are we actually going to call it out for what it is?
So the pandemic has had a huge change in the labour market. So if you look over the last 30 years, the over 50s have driven over 70% of all of the UK's employment growth. That rising long-term trend changed pretty much just around the time when the pandemic started, and the number of over 50s who are working now is no longer growing. So there's been a seismic change in a long-term structural trend.
And what I'm wondering, though, is how are they paying for themselves? Because a lot of them aren't turning to the state. So how are they affording to live? Where's this money coming from? And will it make them destitute when the 60s and 70s?
Yeah, tragically, we see a huge variation in income and wealth actually for this demographic. So often the stereotype is that this age group have all of the money and have ridden all the property boom. Actually, there's a large number who haven't benefited from the property boom. They've been on the wrong side of compound interest for 30 years. And we see a lot of financially vulnerable individuals actually. If you think about women specifically, if you go back as recently as 2011, women could retire at 60 and receive the state pension. Today it's 66. And we come across many individuals who talk about themselves as being too young to retire but too old to find work because of age discrimination and other barriers.
Connor, let me bring you in. I mean, the Adam Smith Institute is a free market body as far as I'm concerned. If people can afford to stop working and they want to stop working, why shouldn't they?
Yeah, it's definitely not our line that people shouldn't be on the golf course if they don't want to be. But Stuart raises a good point, and as Esther said as well, I think the pandemic has been the cherry on the top. But we've seen decades of wage growth, decades of low productivity. And I think a reason a lot of the over 50s aren't coming back after the pandemic is because they're coming to wages that aren't very attractive. They're coming to jobs that aren't very attractive. So one of the Adam Smith policies that we have, the Adam Smith Institute policies that we have at the moment, is extending on the lifelong learning scheme that the government's brought out, which is a great first step, but offering £6,000 a year annually to do courses for over 50s that didn't go to university, so they can reskill and actually go for a job that they're more bothered about rather than just working at. the local shop around the corner like my grandma did.
I guess my concern is the sort of the myopic approach. I don't want to work now. I don't want to. I've come out of COVID. Maybe I've got illness. Maybe I've just reassessed my whole life. But my concern is who is going to pick up the bill for these people once they've tapped into their pension, they've used up all the money. When they get to 60, what is going to happen? And I guess that's why the Chancellor needs them back in work. The state are going to have to look after them then for the rest of their life, and it'll be at a much lower income.
Yeah, and it's tough because a lot of the housing boom that Stuart was talking about has kind of been financed from debt financing rather than increasing taxes over the years. So already a lot of the expenditure on pensions and stuff are going to the young generation as well. So if we've got to pick up this as well as spending half of our money on rent and not being able to buy a house, there's this kind of intergenerational unfairness where a lot of young people are starting to get pretty angry at how things are.
I'm quite surprised by this because it's easier than ever now to work from home, isn't it? I would have thought that as it was easier and easier to work from home, more and more people would say, oh, well, I don't mind doing a bit of work from home. I just don't want to go into the office. Does that not surprise you? It seems.
I don't know about you guys, but when I have to work from home, my productivity dips quite a bit.
So is it laziness then?
I hope his employer's watching this too.
Sorry, Conor, I wasn't pointing at your laziness, but is it the over 50s have given up? Is that? I mean, it sort of has a sense that for some reason, whether it was lockdown, whatever it is, over 50s have given up.
I think it's been tough. Like I said, wage growth hasn't been increasing, and I think the pandemic might have been the cherry on top. There's other things as well. It's not just economically. I think people are enjoying their time at home, seeing kids, grandkids, having leisure time, and thinking,
reassessment of their life. Stuart, Lewis and Conor there, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you both.
Now, coming up, we'll be talking of long-lost treasures as we speak with a metal detectorist about a national treasure that was uncovered this week in Warwickshire. But first, here's the headlines with Tatiana.
Phil, thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The family of missing mother of two, Nicola Billy, have insisted there's no evidence whatsoever that she fell into the River Wyre. It's after police say they believe she fell into the river whilst walking her dog. Nicola disappeared last Friday in Lancashire. The investigation is now focusing on a 10-minute window that's unaccounted for. Officers say they're not treating her disappearance as suspicious, but as a tragic case of a missing person. Health leaders are calling on the government to show initiative to end the recent strikes. The NHS Confederation says the health service will struggle to clear backlogs and improve emergency care unless action is taken. Thousands of nurses and ambulance workers will walk out on Monday in what many are calling the biggest strike day the NHS has ever seen. At least one British sailor has been taken to hospital after problems with water supplies on board their warship. HMS Portland has returned to base as a precautionary measure. The Daily Telegraph newspaper reports the wrong chemicals were put into the vessel's fresh water system, but the error was flagged quickly by staff. The ship has returned to Portsmouth and the issue is being investigated. The Princess of Wales has launched a photo-sharing campaign on social media to raise awareness of the importance of early years development. Kate led the campaign by posting a photograph of herself as a baby with her father. It's all part of her Shaping Us campaign, which has drawn support from the likes of rapper Professor Green and presenter Fern Cotton. She's hoping people will follow suit over the weekend. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
Now, welcome back. Thank you, Tatiana. In the last 20 years, the number of adults needing hospital treatment after a dog bite has tripled. Last month alone, there were 2 fatal attacks. Wow. So what could be behind this increase? We're now joined by dog behaviourist Anna Webb. Anna, thank you so much for joining us. This is really worrying. I was reading in the papers, 5 children have been killed by dogs in the UK, with a 26% rise in dangerous dog attacks since the pandemic began in 2020, culminating in poor 4-year-old Alice Stones. What's happening? Why have we seen this rise?
It is really tragic. And, you know, by the way, Esther, Phil, thanks for having me on. I think the clue could be that the 26% rise has been happening since 2020. You know, the problem is a lot of people took on dogs without really thinking through not only the commitment that a dog is, but, you know, understanding even what a dog is during the pandemic. We took them on to be our constant companions, and they helped us hugely through the pandemic. But a lot of these dogs were being bred unscrupulously, sold on the internet because no one could go and, you know, go anywhere during the pandemic to choose a puppy in the old school traditional kind of way. So a lot of problems began there. And I think as people have gone back to work, they haven't really realised, gosh, what do I do with my dog? So a lot of dogs are being, you know, in a way looked at as little people. And we mustn't forget that dogs are dogs and they have needs as dogs need as emotional.
I was looking at the numbers, Anna. It was something like 2 million more dogs. There's now 12 million dogs in the country. And as you say, they are I know they're a pet, but they are an animal, not a human being. And we're sort of trying to treat them as if they were toys. And you're a behaviouralist. Are they angry? I mean, what is it we've done to these animals?
Well, I think we haven't really respected their full nature as dogs. They are man's best friend, Esther. You know, we've domesticated dogs to live side by side with us for over 30,000 years. Dogs helped us, you know, get to where we are today. I believe we wouldn't be here today without the dog. But I think, you know, dogs do need a lot of stimulation, and the right sort of stimulation. They need, you know, enormous amount of training as a puppy. Bringing a puppy into your life, yes, during the pandemic, I'm sure it gave people things to do. They were cute. They could post lovely pictures on social media. And that was another aspect. People would look at social media for guidance during, you know, the pandemic and think, oh, these people look so happy with their dogs. I know, let's get a dog, without realizing they need to be walked. They need to be trained. They need to be socialized. And by that, I don't mean just letting your dog off in the park to run around and, you know, run up to everyone, perhaps intimidate some people, you know, spoil a game that another owner might be having with their dog. So things have gone a little bit, you know, skew with. But I think the key bit here is people don't understand that dogs have their own language. They have dog language. And I think all owners really need to learn how to speak dog through body language.
So give us some examples. How would you know one was upset or angry, to stay away, to look after it, not have it with young children? How would you know? What are the signs?
One of the signs, the classic signs, is yawning. When a dog is feeling, you know, unsafe, they're feeling that they can't escape from a situation that for whatever reason they're finding stressful. Now, unless you've raised a puppy really responsibly from the get-go and you're bringing in, you know, a rescue dog, or you're looking after a friend's dog or whatever it might be, you don't know what those the triggers are for that dog to make him feel a bit, oh, I don't like this. It could be anything. So a dog might yawn at you. Lots of people think that's the dog saying they're a bit tired, when in fact the dog's saying to you, oh my, I'm really stressed out by this situation. I really need to get out of this, whatever it might be. It might be a toddler crawling really fast towards the dog, and the dog may never have seen a toddler before and find that awfully scary and not know how to behave. And then the problem is instincts kick in and they protect themselves, which, you know, is quite a, you know, a common situation. Another situation is a dog might just look away from you or blink at you. These are also signals that the dog is saying to you, oh, I really don't like standing here. The traffic's really loud. I'm beginning to get awfully anxious and stressed out. So we need to know all of these things about dogs, which I feel has been a bit lacking, so that messages get lost in translation and accidents can happen. But also, you know, we must understand that children and dogs can get on absolutely brilliantly. And the tragedies that have occurred really upset me greatly. You know, I mean, it's awful on all levels. And I just feel that with a bit more understanding, taking on breeds of dogs that suit an individual's experience with dogs, their lifestyle, and their accommodation. And, factoring in, I think a lot of people haven't done, what going back to work means for this dog, who's going to look after the dog, and
a lot seem to have been abandoned as well, as people think, I can't look after them because what seemed like a bit of fun for a short period of time isn't working now, Phil.
And I just wondered, there's always been a lot of debate about the Dangerous Dogs Act and whether or not certain breeds of dog are more dangerous than others. The RSPCA have always said they want legislation to be breed neutral. What's your insight? I mean, are some breeds of dog more dangerous than others?
No, and I think, the statistics seriously back up that they are not. Interestingly, before the Dangerous Dogs Act in 1991 was, issued as quite a knee-jerk piece of legislation, there were rarely any hospitalizations or, fatal attacks from dogs. And what we've seen is in the last decade, since the Dangerous Dogs Act was introduced, more dog bites. So dog bites are on the up. So I don't think it is anything to do with the type of dog. It is just what I said. It's about the training of the dog, the socialization of the dog, and about individual situations. And really, children and dogs, whilst they can get on absolutely brilliantly, I'm a case of that. I grew up with dogs and have lived with dogs all my life, and I'm 57. But, you need to supervise. You need to...
We've got that. We've got to supervise. It's got to be good parenting of dogs. Anna Webb, thank you very much indeed.
That was fascinating,
That was. Do you know what? I feel we've talked about not only sort of good parenting of human beings, we're now talking about good parenting of dogs. They've got to have discipline and you've got to understand them and give them exercise.
Absolutely. Now, coming up, we're joined by a treasure hunter after Henry VIII's pendant was found this week. Stay with us to find out more.
He's the king of breakfast TV and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I can't believe it. It's 12:45. Got some of your views here. Come on, Phil, a couple made me laugh.
Stuart says, at the present time, there is probably more chance of Richard III making a successful comeback than Liz Truss. As a former Labour voter who now votes Conservative, I've been happy with Sunak's performance as Prime Minister, but he needs to fill the vacancy for party chairman with someone who resonates well with former Labour voters. Penny Mordaunt being the obvious choice.
Very good, yes. And Susan here says, if I was like 50 wanting to be encouraged back to work, the first thing is get rid of all this woke nonsense. I wouldn't want to go back with all that. I'm used to calling as well, and to be honest, I'm used to calling a man a male and a woman a female. So all of these things is putting off the over 50s from the workplace. I think it is. Lots of people say that. I just don't feel comfortable anymore with sort of different generations not being able to say this, call me a pronoun and all of this.
Absolutely. Now, one lucky man who had been treasure hunting for just 6 months found the discovery of a dozen lifetimes. An early Tudor pendant and chain made in gold and enamel and bearing the initials and symbols of Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon.
Well, we're joined now by Julian Evan Hart, the editor of Treasure Hunting magazine, who can tell us more about this extraordinary story. I have to first of all say, I don't know if you've ever found such a wonderful discovery, but for a novice to come in and find that, were you jealous? Were you just a little bit jealous that it wasn't you who found it?
I have to admit, in my younger days, when people found glorious objects like this, yeah, I was jealous. Now I'm considerably older. It's just a sheer pleasure to see such a beautiful object found. And best of luck to a new starter in the hobby. Absolutely fantastic.
And it's the thing is that's interesting is that what I was interested by was it said that he was going to share the proceeds with the landowner, the person who owned the land, that they were going to split the bounty 50-50, and it made me wonder what is the law regarding this? If I go out with my metal detector and I find something on somebody else's land, whose is it? And is that an agreement they've come to, or could the landowner have said, well, hold on a minute, it's all mine?
Obviously, the best thing to do in getting permission with metal detecting is to get a pre-drafted agreement to say that you'll share 50-50 any Treasure Act coins or artefacts that you should find. It's a normal, standard thing to do.
Oh, OK. And do we know how much this is likely to fetch for this lucky person who's found it? Do we know what kind of sums we're talking about here?
You're really putting me on the spot with this one. I really wouldn't know. That's beyond my expertise field. This is such a beautifully unique object.
I just want to know what sort of person, because I'm one of these sort of people, what sort of person wants to get a metal detector and wants to go out? Who have you got as part of the sort of treasure hunting group?
It spans right across, all social aspects. Anybody can get hold of a metal detector, or probably gets one for a Christmas present or a birthday present. And it just leads on to such a fantastic hobby. You meet interesting new people. It's like the lottery. You just don't know what's coming out of the ground. The next second, I was on the field the other day and I found a Bronze Age axe head. And the next find I found was part of a Messerschmitt bomber that was shot down during the Battle of Britain. It's absolutely fantastic. The metal detector, actually provides you with a time machine to physically almost go back and touch objects from the past. I mean, how wonderful is that?
We seem to be losing you on the camera here. We had the top of your head a little while ago. Oh, there you go. I was going down to your nose. You were slowly disappearing. But I don't know if you'd want to be a metal detector. No. I would, you see. I'm with Julian on this.
I found it soul destroying. I can't sit, going around a field for hours on end and finding absolutely nothing at the end of it.
No, but it's
absolutely soul destroying.
It's the hope. You see, I'd be thinking, oh my goodness, I could find something worth
that kills you. Kills you.
No. So come on, what's some of your best finds? Last question. What's some of your best finds, Julian?
I've got a few little props here to show people. The first one is this beautiful Celtic gold coin known as a stater. That's 2,100 years old.
Have you got anything bigger, Julian? It was difficult to see that.
Oh, very good.
Very good, excellent.
Sorted you out, Philip, with that, putting it close to the camera. What's this?
That I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
That's the crew access panel to a B-17 bomber that crashed. Now, all these things I regard as treasure, not legally, obviously, but to me, they're fascinating. This actual handle, if you ever watch the wartime film flying fortress, you will see Richard Green grab hold of this very handle to access into the aircraft. To me, a historical object of immense importance.
Julian, we're going to have to... Julian, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for taking the time to join us and give us the enthusiasm for treasure hunting.
I want to go out with Julian. It's one of my lifetime ambitions to do this metal
the
detecting.
trouble is, I'd find this stuff and I'd think, that's just a load of junk, I'll chuck that away.
No.
I'd find, if I came across a treasure, I wouldn't know it was this.
You and I need to go. We'll leave him in the pub or something and we'll go treasure hunting.
Very welcome to come out one day, Esther. Very welcome indeed. And thank you both for having me on your show.
Pleasure.
It's time now for the usual sport and showbiz with Aidan McGee and Hayley Palmer. Hayley, what showbiz treasure have you got for us this week?
Like that little link.
I like that. You did there. I've got to say I'm with you, Phil. I find that really boring. I'm sorry, Esther.
What about you?
Phil discovered treasure the day he met US.
How can I possibly follow that? Well, I want to talk about Molly May from Love Island because she's had a baby. I expect you've heard the news this week, but it's called Bambi, and it's quite an interesting name. I have to say, I secretly quite like it. I mean, I prefer that to, like, Apple.
The bar is not very high, is it? Bambi.
Everything's relative.
Or the place where you conceive Brooklyn. I mean, they're all a bit strange.
I mean, look, she's going to be a star. She's going to be a model or an influencer or something, isn't she? So,
well, I wonder, because does a name influence what you're going to be or whether you go... So does Bambi sound like a star?
Yeah, it's like no one else like Bambi.
Look at Beckham's kids. I mean, no one really knows what they do, yet they are still very famous, and they're probably going to get more famous as time goes on, right?
They've got this ridiculous job of an influencer. If I find another kid who wants to be an influencer, I think, what do you mean?
Yeah,
why don't you do something and have an expertise in something?
Absolutely, but I have to say... Molly May had to block her messages on Instagram because there was so much abuse on there, which is
just
sad.
about the name?
About the name, which is really sad, isn't it? Because, like, if I just had a baby and someone was, slating the name, I'd feel quite hurt by that. But I guess they're putting themselves out there as influencers to have people have opinions about it.
I would like to know about Cher.
Yes.
Did you go and see her show?
I went to see the Cher show. You'd love it. It's all about her life history and all the classic songs.
Were you confused because he said Cher rather than Cher? You were thinking, which show did I go to?
Which one? Which note was that? But I have to say, it's so good because we love a bit of Cher anyway, don't we? We love the fact she's now got a toy boy.
Great.
And her life history is so interesting. Her first husband, he kind of, did her over with a contract. Her second husband, he was on drugs. The third boyfriend, he was a toy boy. So you learn her whole life, dating history, all the highs and lows.
It's worth going to see, is it?
Yes, standing ovation.
I will tell you, if I could turn back time, it's one of Philip's favourite... This isn't a joke.
Thank God.
This isn't a joke. This is what he sings in the car as we're driving along. If he could... I tell you.
Wow.
In Six Nations.
Six Nations. Yeah. Very quickly, look, I don't hold out too many hopes for England. Not necessarily today, but in the tournament. I think it's between Ireland and France who wins this. The new coach has come in, Steve Borthwick. He's made a few changes to Eddie Jones's side. They kick off today at 4:45 against Scotland at Twickenham. Scotland they've only lost one of the last five matches against England. We've Ireland are in Wales today under the roof. Wales have got a new coach. Maybe that could switch.
They've also got a new song. I mean, what's this ludicrous thing about them not banning Delilah being sung at the rugby?
Well,
that's another song Phil likes to sing. If it's not, if I could turn back time, it's Delilah.
Yeah.
Ludicrous.
I prefer your shirt one actually, but no. I think let's wait and see. It's a couple of hours till kick-off now. I think fans might sing it anyway.
Oh, do you think they'll in defiance sing it? They all know the words.
They sing it. They sing it at Stoke City in the football as well. I think there's no way they're going to drop.
I hope so. I'm going to tune in now just to see what is sung. Absolutely.
Are you a Tom Jones fan?
Would you be
booming out Delilah at the rugby?
Karaoke the other day.
It is.
You're not allowed to sing it anymore.
I can't sing many songs, but if there was one I'd sing at karaoke, it would be Delilah. Because you can do all the movements and
exactly.
Joke about with it.
I've got to disagree. She can't sing any songs. Not many.
I'm going
to have to draw this to an end. I can't believe it. We've run out of time. Hayley, Aidan, I can't believe it because we could have been chatting for much longer. In fact, we will off air carry on chatting. That's it for this week. Up next is the wonderful Alistair Stewart and friends. We'll be back next week, so don't go anywhere.
Good morning. Alex Deacon here with your weekend weather update.
Most of us will be dry across England and Wales today. Some rain crossing Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's mild today, will be colder tomorrow, but an awful lot brighter. Here's the picture at the moment. High pressure in control, and we're between two weather fronts. In here, some pretty mild air, but this weather front is mixing things up a little bit, introducing cloud and rain to the Western Isles at the moment, and that rain will push steadily across Scotland and Northern Ireland during this morning. For most of England and Wales, it's dry, a bit of drizzle here and there on western coasts and hills, and some breaks in the cloud here and there to reveal a bit of sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England at times. There's the rain working its way through the central belt and down towards the east of Northern Ireland by the end of the afternoon. It is mild, temperatures 10, 11, 12, maybe even 13 Celsius. Feeling cooler though as the rain pushes in across parts of the north this afternoon. And through this evening, that rain will trickle into northern England and North Wales. It's kind of fizzling out as it sinks its way southwards, so not much rain at all across southern counties during the early hours. Behind it, clearer skies and colder air, so it will be a much colder night tonight compared to the one just gone. Fairly extensive frost, certainly in rural parts from the Midlands northwards, temperatures dipping below freezing, and even in some towns and cities. It does lead to a much brighter day tomorrow.